When I say gaming, what do you think of? Harsh angles, RGB lighting, and built for performance. Well, the ROG Phone 2 certainly covers these bases, but previous gaming smartphones have struggled in other areas that we find the most important in our smartphones today, such as the camera quality, the ergonomics of the phone, and also battery life, since they're driving such high power processors. They've leaned a little bit too much into that gaming theme, and they've struggled to be good smartphones overall. Well, ASUS has flipped the switch this time around, and I can't believe I'm saying this, they've nailed the gaming smartphone. This is the fastest phone that I've ever looked at, and I mean it should be, since its primary purpose is to drive high graphic fidelity games at high frame rates. It's got all the specs that you'd expect from such a phone, including 12GB of RAM and an overclocked GPU to make it, well, just about the fastest thing around. Whilst there is a large list of games that support 120Hz displays, there is a massive list that absolutely doesn't. And two games in particular that I really care about that aren't on these lists include PUBG and Fortnite Mobile. Now, PUBG is limited to 60 frames per second and Fortnite Mobile 30 frames per second. Two games that, I mean, being in esports, really should support higher refresh rate displays, since that gaming fidelity is exactly what a phone like this provides and is one of the reasons you buy a gaming phone. I'm sure with more and more companies and manufacturers taking on the higher refresh rate display, we will see an expanded list of games that support it. But right now, those two games not being on here, that's going to be a big deal breaker for a lot of people. And yes, I keep mentioning 120 frames because this display is 120Hz. It's rapid, it's incredibly quick. It also senses your touch at 240Hz, meaning that you shouldn't get an interrupted gaming experience, and it should be as smooth and as lag-free as possible. High refresh rate AMOLEDs, especially 120Hz, are pretty hard to come by, but ASUS has picked an absolute gem for this smartphone. It gets bright, has fantastic colour, decent viewing angles, and is unbelievably smooth. I mean, playing Minecraft at 120 frames per second on a phone shouldn't really be possible, but it is, and it's awesome. The growing list of games will be supplied in the video description if you really want to check it out, but honestly, when you try one of these phones and you try gaming on a high refresh rate display, it's incredibly difficult to go back to a 60Hz panel. And talking of gaming optimizations, the lack of a hole punch or notch means that the screen is uninterrupted, which is the best way to do it for gaming. And you might have noticed that the corners on these displays, whilst they are a little bit rounded, they are tightly rounded, meaning that you're not going to get as big a UI cutoff as a lot of gaming phones have had in the past when you go into games and the UI on the screen doesn't quite fit the display and it gets cut off by the rounded corners. This one's going to minimize that, it's not going to alleviate it, but it's definitely going to make the experience better. So the ROG Phone 2 is doing pretty good at the moment, but what about areas in which the gaming phones of the past have stumbled a little bit? Well, there are 3 cameras in total on this device, but each one is very useful and does its job well. The 48 megapixel main shooter on the back captures heaps of information, and resulting images have great dynamic range, color accuracy, sharpness, and detail. In fact, the main camera on the back is the best camera that I've ever seen put into a gaming phone. It's great. Then there's the wide-angle 13 megapixel camera that I really like thanks to its extended field of view. The quality isn't quite there and it doesn't quite carry over from the 48 megapixel sensor, but that's to be expected of a smaller sensor and inferior glass. And the 24 megapixel selfie shooter captures great shots with a nice amount of detail and surprisingly good portrait photos too. As an overall smartphone camera, I found this to be very impressive for what it is. In fact, it was a lot more enjoyable than I thought it was going to be going into it, and of course it's a gaming phone, so you have to consider that as its primary purpose. But having cameras this good on a gaming phone has never happened in the past, and I'm really glad that we see those here. And with a 6,000 mAh battery, you won't be worrying about range anxiety either. I mean, this thing is going to be a 2-day or even 3-day phone for a lot of people. For lighter users, towards that 3-day mark, but for true gamers, for people who are playing games on their phone all the time, this is going to last a full day. And it has a couple of tricks up its sleeve to make it even better than just a large cell. For example, we have 30-watt quick charge 4.0, which is a brilliant protocol, and even though it's a large 6000 mAh cell, it doesn't seem to take forever to charge, which is great. Then there's a super cool feature where you can plug in your phone into someone else's phone and you can give them a charge at 10 watts, which I think is pretty useful because the battery on this thing is so large that it's nice to share. And then there's the software to thank for this battery life. It's not all down to hardware here. Zen UI 6 is doing a stellar job here. But you know how gaming phones of the past have had really terrible software and they've kind of had a lot of bloat in there and they very much stuck to that gamer aesthetic? Well, ASUS has flipped the script here as well, providing basically stock Android with a few little ASUS gamery bits sprinkled in to make it optimized for what it is. It's based on Android 9 Pie, which I know is kind of already outdated, but ASUS released this phone at a bit of an awkward time on the transition to Android 10, and we have reached out to ASUS. They did say that they will be releasing an update to this, hopefully soon, just after they release that update for the Zenfone 6. And talking of sprinkled in features, this phone has a couple of things that, well, kind of make it feel a little bit more premium. First off is this pair of air triggers on the top, which are kind of like capacitive buttons that you're able to remap in games to use as triggers for anything you'd like, and you remap to the buttons on the screen. They feel really nice because they kind of blend into the layout and you don't really feel them. They're not tactile, they are capacitive, and then when you need them, they're there. It's like having a controller built into your phone without having the heft of that. Next is the in-display fingerprint scanner, whilst not necessarily very quick, is pretty accurate and did work 99% of the time for me. There's also this Easter egg where on the SIM tray it says GLHF, good luck, have fun, which I think is nice. It's kind of an attention to detail that you wouldn't necessarily see on other gaming phones. We have a load of ports, including 3 USB-Cs and a headphone port. And the reason for those ports, there is a pretty large library of first-party accessories that we actually have here. So there's a second screen, there's a dock, there's a gigabit Ethernet port connector for some reason. There's so much going on here. And the one inclusion that you get in the box without having to spend extra money is the fan, because this thing runs pretty hot. I noticed that along the right side where there's kind of a copper vent, this phone would get really hot when doing anything intensive. I think that's probably due to the fact that it's got an overclocked GPU. So having this fan included in the box is a necessity, not just a cool add-on. It also cools your hands, so that's pretty cool. Guys, somebody did it. Somebody finally nailed the gaming phone. For just under €1,000, you get the fastest phone on the market, with other great inclusions like phenomenal battery life, a great camera, a fantastic screen, great software, a headphone port, which is something that we shouldn't really be taking for granted these days, and most importantly, a device that I can say is made for gamers, but that can be used by everyone. It might not be perfect, but it's a massive step in the right direction. Good job, ASUS. If you've enjoyed this video and you want to check out the full written article, please do check out the link in the video description. As always, please do like, comment and subscribe if you're new around here to never miss a video like this one. I've been Ryan Thomas with Android Authority, and I'll see you later. Peace.